Podcast kláštera.
Hello and welcome. You are listening to our Monastery podcast, which is being recorded as a part of the 6th Symposium of Illustration. Meet this year's participants and see what else we have to offer on our Facebook, Instagram or our website www.symposiumilustrace.cz. This is your host, Štěpánka Jislová. Hello and welcome, our dear listeners. Today I am joined by Sonja Stangl, an Austrian illustrator who will talk about her work, her approach and what she's doing here in Broumov. Hello, Sonja.
Hello, thank you for having me.
How are you doing today? How's
Good.
your experience of Broumov so far?
It's a really beautiful town, and I'm so lucky that we had nice weather the last few days.
For 3 days?
For 3 days, yeah. It's also nice to have a bit of cozy rain day today, so get the mixture. Yeah.
So it motivates you to work when it's raining?
Exactly. If it would be just sunny all the time, that would be not so good for the projects, but...
But you've already saw a bit of the landscape around here, right?
We've been hiking to the mountains with the rock formations, which was really beautiful and stunning. You feel like a little child going through the rocks and discovering things. And then we had a little swim in the lake. And yeah, it's a beautiful area around here. I love seeing it and exploring it.
It is. Is this your first time staying in a monastery?
Yes,
Yeah?
it is, yeah.
And what do you think? How does it feel for you? Is it inspiring or do you feel a bit out of place?
Both, I think, in some ways, because I mean the building is beautiful, so you're always inspired and you feel like you imagine what has happened there. How was it 100 years ago? And you, in your mind's eye, see the monks going through to prayer or something. But it also has kind of like an awe-inspiring thing. Like you feel like, you be silent and you, I don't know. It induces respect, I think, for the history and for what is happening there. So I like the place a lot. It's noisy, like we've been talking about. You can hear every key turning, but yeah, I think it's part of the whole charm of it.
And how do you relate to the local monk quote, to pray and to work?
Yeah, interesting question. Yeah, I mean, I guess whatever you find important. I've discovered for myself that working all the time is not the best thing for me to do mentally. Praying, yeah, I get it. I think you can transfer that saying to something that makes you feel good, like work as in create, be creative, and pray as in take care of your mental or spiritual, if I want to use that word. But I think, you can fit in whatever you want in that, but... Yeah, I think it's good to have a mantra, but I wouldn't necessarily just pray and work for myself.
I agree. The meditation can be also kind of the same thing, like prayer. Or for someone, it can be just taking long walks.
Exactly, yeah. Like finding your space, finding peace where you can wind down from whatever is happening.
Yeah, inner peace, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So has something inspired you enough to create it as the final artwork for our exhibition, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'm working with clay for my final art piece, and I'm exploring a bit like also the history of the place and try to incorporate it in little figures that I can place around town or around where the exhibition will be. I'm not 100% set down on what exactly it's gonna be. Like, I want to be open and see what's happening, because I think that's the beauty of it. You can react to whatever. Like, even the other people, like when they were talking for the mural about animals, and I was like, I can make animals and put something mythical with them. And I kind of enjoy this open process right now. And I want to go into clay because it's something I discovered recently. Since working professionally as an illustrator, it happens a lot that I at least got into working a lot digital, and you always have to be prepared to like make changes and be fast and be very like, sometimes it feels like it became work, like really work. And then I love doing things like that where I can just get my hands dirty and just play with it and rediscover why I actually started doing that job. And so yeah, I'm at this state right now where I'm just like, okay, see where it's going.
Yeah, I know how that feels. Sometimes I feel like I have to outsource my creativity because I just need to get the work done.
Yeah.
But then you really need to find it in different activities, or you just stop becoming, artist in the really core sense of the word.
Yeah, it's a fine line. Like being also, if you do commissions, you are kind of like a service provider. You draw what someone wants you to draw, but you still have to connect to that inner child that made you want to draw. I think in a way, because it's a hard work. Like it's not something I can go to the office and say like, I'm just gonna do my job and I don't care, because you put too much into it to not care. I think.
Yeah. You usually put like your whole heart into it.
Exactly. Yeah. So you have to find what sparks you in what you do. Yeah.
So is this something you do often? You find new areas that you can explore creatively to kind of feed in your work-life balance?
Yeah, in a way, yeah. I started, like I noticed a few years ago that I got I had like the client list and awards, and I was like, I should be really happy now as an illustrator, but I don't feel it right now. So I was like, okay, something is wrong. Like I'm living the dream I had for me when I was studying. I was like, okay, self-employed as an illustrator. And I missed something, so I started like, okay, what is it? How can I get this fun? And I started to like make things with ink again and incorporate it in the digital, like almost like a digital collage. So I would, for a project, like really go into. I did something with fig leaves, and it was winter, and there was no way to get fig leaves in Vienna at that time. So I spent like hours researching, and I found a little fig farm outside of Vienna that sold dried leaves, and I went there and got them and made them wet and then made ink prints of it that are just a little part of the illustration. But sometimes this like obsession with something makes you happy about it again.
Yeah.
And there I was like, okay, I need to do this more often. And now I'm like, even like rolling things in ink or putting your fingers somewhere, and then it's just a little part of your illustration, like a texture, but it still made me so happy to make it.
Yeah, also it makes you get out of the comfort zone of your skill, like finding a farm and traveling there. At least it's like a different way how to spend time but still be creative, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's also the thing you remember and that made you excited, and you can like you put it on a paper and you peel off the leaf and whatever texture is coming out from under it, like it's kind of like this childish wonder again. So yeah, and since then I'm a lot more like making notes to myself, okay, how can I make a fun part in this project, like even if it's simple client commission, like okay, what can I incorporate that is something that makes me really happy to do. So yeah.
But I'm really intrigued, you mentioned the balance between building your career and still enjoying it. So did you come like close to a burnout at some point, or? Yeah, I did like in early 2021. Mm-hmm. I think it was also like a lot of us had it hard in the pandemic, so I think it was a mixture of everything. And I noticed at some point I was like, okay, I don't know what happened the last few months. I was just in working, I didn't feel anything anymore, like you kind of get numb, and so I stopped everything for a little while as much as I could and just regain my perspective on things. And since then I'm very, very cautious about how to use my energy, because I was always like throwing it out. I mean, like I do this and I do that and I want to take on every project, but
you know, it has a cost. You kind of destroy yourself in a way with it.
Yes,
and
definitely.
you have to be like loving yourself as much as you do your projects in a way. So, yeah.
Because when one looks at your portfolio, it can be really impressive. You have cooperated with a lot of clients, a lot of foreign clients. So this is a portfolio that takes years and dedication to build. So how did you come to it? Was there like a time in your life when you just like put work first? And then you finally, like you're describing the burnout you had like pre-pandemic and during pandemic, was that like kind of a breaking point after doing this for a really long time?
Yeah, in a way, yes. I did, especially like in my early 20s, mid-20s. I was coming out of university, and you always hear as an illustrator, you need to work really hard to make it. And I was like, okay, that's the thing you need to do. So I was drawing and I was trying to get into the industry, and I spent like most weekends working. I didn't take holidays. Like, you know, now looking back, I didn't neglect friendships and stuff. I was like, oh, I'm so happy that the people were there afterwards when I reconnected. But yeah, I had a time where I was really into my bubble and really into, I need to make this work. And already pre-pandemic, I kind of discovered that my energy is going low, that I need something else, like how important it is to have, like, go for a walk in the woods or that kind of thing. And yeah, it took me a while to, like, I noticed something is wrong, and I couldn't shift straight away because you're so set in the way you do things. You're like, okay, now I have all the projects, I need to keep going. And then I wasn't fast enough, so I kind of then had the breakdown. But I think it's good. Like it's not good in that way. It's obviously better if you manage to do it straight away in a balanced way. But for me, it was important to have that, to discover, okay,
it was kind of like a stop sign.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I understand. I think I've went through a very similar things. Did you notice any symptoms that are preceding this? Like, I mean, the symptoms of when one is overworking themselves. I'm trying to come up with some advice we can maybe give to our listeners. Yeah, I noticed like I was sleeping really badly. Like I wasn't able to fall asleep fast because it was always, everything was on my mind. I noticed that I was a lot more reactive to things. Like if something happens, you're like, you're not like balanced and think about things, or like even sometimes a car going fast by or something, like it's small things, you're kind of chumpy, I noticed. And it was more, I noticed it more afterwards, being like, when was the last time I felt at ease, and I felt like I was just sitting there and enjoying a conversation with a friend, or like I was having a really good laugh without feeling like, okay, when do I need to go back to work? So yeah, I think that are the signs. Was it the same for you? Yeah, very similar. I noticed that I had very hard time leaving my work desk. And when I actually made plans, for example, I'm going to finish a page per day. When I finished the page, I was like, oh great, now I can like do maybe another. Yeah. So I'm not like falling behind, but that's exactly what's going to fuck up your schedule, because then you always feel like you need to do extra, just a little bit more, but you will never like take out the things that it should be like a pile of 3 hours, but you will never like take it out.
Yeah, and you never have this moment of like, I did what I had to do today and I'm proud of myself.
Yes.
And it's fine. It's always like more. And when is this moment where you can just stop and breathe if you always put more onto yourself?
It never felt like the work was over.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think it's really important to really make your schedule, like make the minimum thing you have to do in a day. It's like, okay, if I do this, I feel happy, and it should be something that's really achievable, like not like I did before. I was writing this endless to-do list, so like it could fit in a month, right? So I'm like, okay, today I just want to pick the texture and the shape, the basic shape, and something you can do within a few hours, and then you have like, okay, do I want, like, I'm done, I feel good, do I want to do more, or do I want to go out and have more? I think most of it is more like really consciously thinking about the decisions you make and not just running after one thing after the other.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is a really important topic in a broadened discussion about mental health in our profession, because a lot of people equal their worth with their art. But on the other hand, if you want to do this job, you really need to be diligent and you need to do it, I don't want to say perfectly, but you need to be really good. So there are like these two directions pushing into each other.
It's really tough. Like I'm wondering if it changes now. I don't know many people my age who have had from the beginning like a very balanced work ethic in illustration. I feel like the younger generation is a bit more aware of it.
Hopefully.
So, yeah. I think it is possible. I think it's a hard thing to, like, we are making a shift. I think like even older illustrators, I know they were even more like it. I think we're already going in the right direction that we noticed earlier. And I think the competition or this push, we do it to each other, right? If everyone is like, oh, you have to do work night and day, like if we all just relax a bit, I think it's easier for all of us. And yeah, of course, if someone wants to do that, whatever you want to do, but I think for most people, it's also, it doesn't mean that you necessarily have, that your work is worse. Of course, you need to practice, but I think like a lot of the time when I relax, I have better ideas. Like if I stop earlier and go to bed or go for a walk, when I come back, I'm way better at deciding.
Yeah.
And then I don't sit there for hours and be like, oh, how do I do this? How do I do this? Just go away. And so I don't think it's necessarily you're gonna fall behind if you take care of your mental health and your balance.
I agree. You can't run like sprint if you've been running marathon like all the time.
Yeah.
But talking about the professional side of things, what was your approach to getting clients, to finding interesting work?
Yeah. For me, it was mostly through events and networking, like people.
Okay.
And I did send out portfolios when I started, but it rarely got, like, I didn't get that much. I think they always land in a drawer somewhere. But I was mostly going to events, like conferences or even like meetups in Vienna where other illustrators are, and looking like international events to get international clients. And I think that's the main way to get clients, or at least it worked really well for me. But I also want to say it's not like you need to be super extrovert and outgoing to do that, because I'm not. Like I'm very introvert. And when I started and I was told like, oh, you need to go out and show everyone your work, I was like, no, I cannot do that. Like I cannot go up to people and like, look at my stuff. Yeah, it's just not me. So I was a bit annoyed, thinking, why is my work not enough? Like, why do I also have to be sociable? I do hard work, like, why not just that? And then looking back, I noticed that it actually did work mostly through people, but not in this exhausting or like awkward way that I thought it would have to. Like, and there is a conference in Portugal every year, which is called THU, like Trojan Horse is a unicorn, for example, just to give you one. And I go there with other illustrators. I know with my friends, I feel comfortable. You sit at the bar, you talk about something, and then someone beside you makes a joke. You start a conversation, and you notice, oh, it's an art director from somewhere.
Ah, so cool.
I think it's more in that way it happens. And also from other illustrators, I got a lot of jobs for, like, especially if you go with illustrators that are more experienced, like in the Vienna meetup, I got the big museum job in Germany, and he just didn't have time. He was like, oh, okay, I'm too busy right now. And then he passed it on to me. And I was like, oh, that's a giant job. You get into that. And I think it's more about trying to grow this network and be there with people in a normal, natural way. Like they become your friend group and then you pass work to each other. I think that for me was the main thing.
Yeah, so like in the beginning the approach is to like find festivals, find meetups, find like mentor, programs, go there, but to keep in mind that the work related connections are not this straight up. It's more like this mushy social groups, networking. That's what worked for you.
Exactly. Yeah. And be yourself that's always a sentence that's overused, I think. But yeah, you don't have to oversell yourself. It works in a more natural way as well. Yeah.
So do you think it's more important to be like visible? It doesn't have to be like a direct communication, just that you're there, and that counts for physical and online space.
Yeah, I think of course visibility is super important. I don't think the only having an Instagram profile is enough. I feel like, at least for me, it was mostly people want to kind of get in touch in person, and they kind of want to see you, even though you don't have you become best friends, but they know you're an illustrator in Vienna and you always are at some events, so they kind of see your face over and over, even though they haven't spoken to you directly. Sometimes even happened also, and then they look into your work, and then you have to be online. The other way, I mean, I do get jobs from Instagram as well, like the other way around, but that took longer than the jobs I got in the beginning, where it was mostly about talking to people.
Yeah, I could also see on my socials that I'm getting different jobs from Instagram and different jobs via my website. That is kind of like you can see the direct approach. People actually have Instagram, but people from someone from a company will probably write you via website.
Yeah. It sometimes goes the other way, like with Sonnentor, for example. I think you have it here as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and they found me on Instagram, and then they approached me via website. So it's a lot of art directors nowadays, I think, are on Instagram and looking for inspiration like that, and Pinterest, I think, weirdly enough. And then they go to your website, so you have something behind it. But of course, it's important to be visible, to put your stuff out there, I think, and that's something I have to put myself on the nose. Doesn't translate.
Out there, maybe.
No, I have to take care that I do it more, because I get into this. You're working, you maybe make things that are not perfect, and you only want to show like the really big and great things, and then you don't post enough, and it's like, just put it out there.
Regularity is key when it comes to algorithm.
That's the other side of it. Feed the algorithm.
So you've mentioned art director's job, so that's something that you also do. What is your approach? Because we've talked a lot about the niche social skills that an illustrator must have, but I can imagine that for an art director there's also going on a lot in this department.
It's hard in the beginning, or it was for me, to learn how to describe what you're used to making things and then suddenly you have to tell someone else what is in your head. So I think that's really important. Usually when I do art direction jobs, like the big one for the museum, I go to the client and then I make the style with them. And first it's only me. I just go through everything and I define what it should be and make the style guide in a way with the client. And then I look for other illustrators where I know, okay, they can do it, or even animators and whatever I need on text and everything I need on the project. And for that, it's really good also to have this kind of network and know who is good at what. And Yeah, and then I think the most important thing is defining a space, and I like to call it, I think, inside the box, because this all outside of the box thinking, I find for the creative process is really not good to get things together. Like, if you have a lot of ideas and a lot of ways you can go to, everything is overwhelming, and if you need to make decisions, you need to have some frame to know where you want to go. And I think that's really important in art direction, to build this box where you say, okay, these are the rules for design, these are the rules of what we're going to do, this is our vision. And you can play in this box as much as you want, like give the space, because you don't want to micromanage, because that sucks for the artist and for the art, like no one is happy about it. But building the box, let them play in the box and make sure they don't go too far out of it. I
agree, because you need limitations, so the work works like internally, right?
Yeah, and there is something to hold on to, like okay, this is my framework. If I'm getting lost or if I don't know where to go, I'm like, okay, think back on what was the main vision, the main goal, what helps me define my ideas. And also, it's really hard to come up with ideas if you don't have any limit to yourself. You can go anywhere. And I also do that for, like, as a creative process for myself. Like, okay, just decide on certain rules around it, and then I'm like, okay, if there is something, a really good reason, I'm like, okay, I need to take a step out of the box or get a bigger box. But to start with, it's, I think, really good to have some limitations. Yeah.
And how do you feel in the leadership position?
It doesn't feel like leadership. It's more like working together. I feel, from an artistic perspective, I feel good in the way I love to come up with ideas and create stuff and have this, like, initial phase. Like, I really enjoy that, to define the language we're speaking style-wise. But I'm not really good at finishing off details. Like, I get frustrated with that sometimes. So I love to, when it balances out, like someone who is, like, really good at going into the nitty-gritty stuff of everything. And I'm like, that works perfectly. I enjoy it in that way that you work together with people. Like, as an illustrator, a lot of the time you're very isolated. You're kind of doing your own thing, but in art direction you do something in a team. That's really nice. And yeah, you learn communication. Communication is really important in that. Leadership, that's such a weird word. In an art direction role, but in a positive way. Like, you also, like, when I explain something and then something else entirely shows up, and I'm like, oh, okay, I need to say it differently. Like, you learn to get really precise in what you want, and that I enjoy a lot. What I didn't think before was hard for me in art direction is that you have to be very available all the time.
Oh, okay.
Because I thought it's more like, okay, I give you this, and it's a bit like guiding as well during the process. Like, people wanna quickly shoot something back at you, or it was more work than I thought it would be. I hope that doesn't sound like I don't know. You sometimes think, you work with other people, so you get this framework, and then they can do whatever they want. But I think it's more demanding than that. You kind of have to be there for the whole process in a way. Yeah.
So, what was the biggest team you had for a project?
Not that big. Wait, let me think. On that, with there were 5 people.
5 people. Well, that's.
But not all at the same time. Like, a bit delayed. Like, you do animation, illustration, so it's not at the same moment. But yeah,
And could you share, like, what type of projects do you usually have this role on? You don't have to describe them, just so our listeners know what kind of project you usually need. An art director.
Yeah. It's for bigger animation projects mostly, because you just need more people for animation. And for, like, to describe the museum I did, that was a mixture of a lot of things. Like, we had little explainer videos, so there was animation with it, but it was like, I don't know, a few hundred illustrations throughout the museum where you describe different scientific topics and so if it's something where there is a lot of things to do, where you're not asked as an artist to have, like, sometimes, like, illustration shops, it's like, oh, I want you as an artist. And so if it's a client that is more corporate, or like even the culture, like a museum, that's the jobs where you can put your team together. And we often, sometimes, like, even if I see a pitch where I was like, okay, we need an agency or something, I'm like, no, we can do that as a team of freelancers. Like, I like to sometimes convince companies also that you don't always have to get an agency. Because we can do it, and we can, like, work as a team, like, just having these loose networks where you can, like, okay, we come together for this project, and then everyone does their own thing again, so it's not so hard to start, like, your own agency where you have to put in a lot of money and work. And but in classical illustration, you just do your own, like, for books and stuff, it's you don't really need a team for that usually.
It's more authorial. I understand. One more thing I wanted to talk about was art prices, because that's also, like, a big part of being in this profession. You have won many, so let me just read out some for our listeners. So you got 2 nominations for Best Austrian Animation Festival in 2022. There was World Illustration Awards in 2019, nomination for the Romulus Candia Prize 2019, and with your picture book, Bears Lost Hearing. And there's way many more. I don't think I really need to read all of them, because it's just a lot.
Oh.
So congrats.
Thank you.
But I am more interested in your personal feelings about this. How does it make you feel when you win a prize?
Yeah, awards are a funny thing in our industry. Like, of course it makes you feel good to have this recognition and to have someone say, well done, in a way. It's kind of like a legitimizing you as an artist, because I don't know, I guess we all have a little bit of imposter syndrome sometimes. I think on the other side, awards are a lot for outside, I think. They're really, like, we within illustrators, you kind of know, okay, you were interested in it, and of course it makes you look into who did what. But what I find a lot with clients that are not working in the field, so they don't have a professional opinion on illustration. So I feel for that it helped me a lot, because they don't know how to judge your work sometimes. If it's like a project manager or someone who's nothing to do with art, and they see, you have won prizes, that must mean you are a professional.
Okay.
So even though they don't even know what the prizes are, so I find, even though I don't like to be like, I won this, like, even have it all on my website and hold the prizes in front of me, like, it doesn't feel natural, but it helps people navigate it. I think it's kind of like, okay, you know what you're doing, in a way. So for that, I find it really useful. But I also know there is, like, a dark side of awards sometimes, where you can basically buy them sometimes. Like, there is things where it doesn't mean that much. That's only what other illustrators can judge. Like, is it a good award? Like the World Illustration Award, where there's, like, a really, like, they have an excellent jury and they make a lot of effort. And you're like, okay, I get this prize. Then I'm like, I know who judged it, and I feel, like, really honored. So that's when I'm happy that where I'm like, okay, if they think I'm doing cool stuff, I'm not completely off, I think. So yeah.
I also found it as the best way how to communicate with public on what the piece, it can be an illustration or a book, what it really is. But I find the competitive aspect of it a bit troublesome sometimes, because you're competing with your colleagues, with your friends, and sometimes it just feels icky.
Yeah, especially if you know who else handed in stuff. Like you have, I get that. I think a lot of the time it's also like we know that it's not just your, like it doesn't mean that someone else is better or worse. It doesn't, like for me, I don't feel, if I don't get an award and I know the person who did, or I feel like super happy for them as well. And I think the other way, like it doesn't necessarily mean that I don't have any knowledge or something. But yeah, I don't know how else you could do it. I think in a way of recognizing artists and still have an award system. I think it's good that they often have like short lists or mentions. So they're like, okay, we try and bring everyone in. But yeah, it's always one person who wins the prize in the end.
I also like the idea of shortlist, because it's more like here's like 10 interesting things that were created in the past year, and you can like take a look, and it kind of divides the attention. But yeah, I think when it comes to doing promo and when the TV comes, they want like one big winner, not like 10 people.
Yeah. No, but it's a good idea. Maybe have only shortlists for awards, and then it becomes more natural and more like a group of people. Yeah.
So, Sonja, one last thing. You have agreed to give us a little talk about Austrian illustration, which our dear listeners you can find on our Facebook, SoundCloud, everywhere you can find these podcasts. And I just want to ask Sonja to give us a little teaser, so you feel motivated to check that talk out.
Yeah, sure. I talk a little bit about what's happening in illustration in Austria right now through different areas, like through games, animation, murals, books, like a little, obviously from my perspective, like from what I find good and cool, and a little bit about what is happening in Vienna. I also want to talk about like networking, like we already did, and like you mentioned, the mental health aspect a little bit, because it's when you have networks, there are events happening, artists meet, it helps a lot. So yeah, I want to give a little bit an insight into festivals that are in Vienna and the greatest stuff that I think came out recently.
That sounds great. I can't wait to hear it. Thank you so much, Sonja.
Thank you.
Do you want to meet the other participants as well? Listen to their episodes on SoundCloud, YouTube and Facebook. This was your host, Štěpánka Jislová.
Podcast z kláštera.